I guess I'm live now. Great. We are live. This is 999 Show, the Friday night show. Talk to me. I have a link into, if you want to come up on the screen or anything like that and be part of the show, I do have a link in the description. I also have a phone number. I have a phone number as well. But what I was thinking about, because I was watching this Parkrose Permaculture video a couple days ago, and it was all about is spiritual psychosis, religious psychosis, psychotic breaks from reality running rampant in American Protestant Christianity in today's world. And so it goes into the video, goes through these different scenarios, people talking about, they're between their speaking in tongues or they're demon possessed or the weird experiences that they have. And then she's kind of wondering, are those people nuts? And then I was kind of thinking about my own experiences through time. Welcome, Care Bear. Welcome, Mama Sushi. It's good to see your names here out and about again. And then in church history, remembering some of those experiences from reading about, from like Hildegard of Being, Joan of Arc, Teresa of Avila, and then I guess in the list there's like William Blake and Rumi, just some of the famous mystics who had visions and dreams and where psychology might go back and look at those visions and dreams that were written down and wonder, well, maybe these people were having psychotic breaks in their reality. And then last night there was as a side note, I was watching a video, and it was it was a TED Talk. It was from years ago. And I know I'm jumping around here a lot. Anyway, a TED Talk from years ago. And I don't remember the guy's name. I should probably see if I could, link the video or whatever. But he was from years ago, and he was going into indigenous cultures and meeting with people, and was doing a compare and contrast for the most part between our society in the Western world and indigenous cultures, because where a person who might be a shaman may have had these psychotic experiences when they were in their late, in their teens, and had these visions and had these experiences of the snake handlers. Yeah, well, stuff like that. They're in a alternative reality, being in an alternative reality. And so if you'd like to be part of the show, Care Bear, there's a link in the description. Just click that link, and that one will take you, it's a StreamYard link. And just, you don't have to have your face on or anything like that. You just have to promise me that you're not going to come up here and I don't know, do trolling behaviors on either the phone or on the video camera, because I've heard about that. Of the guy I had on 2 weeks ago had a live panel, open panel, and somebody came on and showed their wanker on the video, and I had somebody, when I did on Super Bowl Sunday, or the day before the Super Bowl Sunday, somebody came in, used my live phone number, and I had a nice conversation, and then it devolved into the guy using the N-word, and he was like, I didn't know that the guy could use the N-word that fast. And so, yeah, that's right. Some guy was talking about somebody came on there, and they had a live show, and the guy, yeah. So that was like that kind of, was got me thinking that maybe I shouldn't do a live show, but you have to be, I mean, a live show where you can bring in people from the viewership to be part of the show and kind of just impromptu talk about these things. But nevertheless, we're going to just kind of move on. So no one's going to come on and show their wanker on camera or do any flashing and because, I don't want to get like banned from YouTube or anything like that for for that kind of stuff. But so we were talking about spiritual psychosis and that me as a mystic, and I've had experiences like when I went to Israel, and so there's like a distinction between ordinary mystic experiences and full-blown psychotic events. And so do spiritual people, they have when you are in your group, in these groups that might bring out bring this out so that people, it gives an environment where a person can enter into a psychotic experience, and or can you have a shared psychotic experience? And so if I go back and I look at my experiences, so in Israel, on the Sea of Galilee, in a cabin, and I was with a girl, and I had a strong spiritual connection to this girl. She had a strong spiritual connection to me. And we had a shared experience. Now, I don't know if shared experiences are, I mean, I guess I read that they can happen in psychotic people. People can have a shared psychotic experience. And so being in our world, in the Western world, in the world of materialism, and where there is no magic, they have classified many of these experiences, encounters, as just being is being like what a psychotic experience. And so whereas what distinguishes a full-blown psychotic experience would be, you would have a lot of fear, you would have just a sense of reality being completely broken reality being, and then that broken reality, experiencing a lot of fear. Or you would have because they said that this happens with people who meditate a lot. So meditation can result in a psychotic experience, and so where you have an experience of your ego dissolving, which can happen also when people take psychedelics and psychedelic like mushrooms and LSD and things like that. And so you would go down to South America and pay some shaman a lot of money to go have a psychotic experiment, a psychotic experience of your ego dissolving, and you dissolving into a place where your sense of self disappears. You can go. I've just looked this up. I don't know for myself how to, or to even instruct you how, if you're interested in doing that, how to do that. But this is stuff that you could do. They have these shamans down in South America. You go there, they can walk you through the whole. Welcome, Moon Bingo. Yeah, so your ego was dissolving in still last summer. Yes, from meditation, spiritual awakening later. So there's a place where spiritual awakening and sort of mental illness, as far as our society is concerned, can define it. So do you want to roast me right now, or not coming on? No, you can't. I'm not going to have you come onto the screen and doing that. But if you have it in the chat, then I'll look at the comments and so forth. But but nevertheless, so yeah, so we have an experience where you dissolve, and so ego dissolving and dissolving into feeling like you dissolve into nothingness. Well, that could be classified as, oh, all right, well, good night, Mama Sushi. I'm glad to see your name out and about. I know that you're like really super tired and busy right now with a newborn, and you're going to be that way for quite some time. But anyway, so you have that experience, and that experience, which, well, hello, Maria, welcome. Can't get enough of you. No, not can't get enough of you. And I'm doing, this is my regular Friday program. I'm trying to do something interesting. I don't know if it's interesting or not, and maybe it's not. But anyways, so people have these experiences and they get called by modern medicine, they get called crazy and nuts. And so if we look at like uh, Hildegard of Bingen, who was lived between 1098 and 1176. So when they go back and look at her visions, I'll just go read over what those experiences were. And so she wrote in a book called Shadow of Living Light that she saw a shadow of living light that filled her mind. In that light could suddenly understand scripture, theology, and structure of the universe. So in this experience, she understood how the universe was structured. She understood all the theology that she had ever encountered, and she got an experience of being able to understand, have full understanding of the scripture as she had learned them. And so in her vision, instead of losing consciousness, she said she was fully awake, aware of her surroundings, and able to remember all these details clearly. And she described the experience as being bathed in radiant meaning, bathed in gnosis, bathed in the word, bathed in experience. So she wasn't like in a trance state. So maybe she was, but she wasn't. She was experiencing all these things, but then at the same time, if you look out into the world, you see the cow pastures, or you see the houses, you see the castles, or wherever, because it was like 1,000 years ago that she had these experiences. And so you have these different layers. There's your world, and then there's this other world, and then so you're writing about this now, thinking about, yeah, so this is something about ready to share that's very intense and personal. Would you like to share that here? But if you want to come and share that on here, Karen, there's a spot here. You can come on up and come on in and be part of the show. But anyway, so experiencing these different things and experiencing the cosmic realm, and experiencing the cosmos, and in a new way, and so that's kind of part of these intense mystic experiences that people have had. But whereas Western science can go back and look at them and said, oh, maybe these people were just having these psychotic experiences and they were just nuts. And I look at, like, when I went to Israel. Now, when I went to Israel in 95, there was, 20 of us? I think there was like 20 of us on the trip. And as we were going on, we were there for 21 days. As the days mounted, all of us got more spiritually high on every single day. And there is this phenomenon that happens in Israel or in Jerusalem. It's called Jerusalem syndrome. So you don't do drugs, but okay. Well, I don't do drugs either. So I've had I've had experiences minus doing anything, doing drugs or anything like that. I used a little reefer Mary Jane like once or twice when I was younger, but it always gave me panic attacks, so I didn't really use it. It was not something that but so maybe that was what triggered these. I don't know. Maybe it was all the coffee, because coffee is a psychoactive drug. It's a psycho. It's sort of a. It's in the same class of drugs. Caffeine is in the same class of drugs as like LSD is, but it much. Yeah. So it makes you wonder if this makes it seem crazier. But yeah, so yeah, makes it seem crazier. But anyways, we were there as we're in Israel, and of course I had that experience with that girl. We had a shared experience. I looked into her eyes and I saw faces wrapped. I saw all these faces. Her face changed to different forms and everything, and she was looking at my eyes and having the same similar experience. And now, of course, I sometimes I look back and I wonder, was she a twin flame? Was this a soulmate experience? I don't know, because we were really tight. We were really close as far as it was really intense, and being able to feel what she was feeling when I was miles away. Now, this may seem crazy, or I could tell when I was like driving through the town, I could tell where she was. So that's crazy. Yes, it was a crazy experience. It didn't seem crazy to me, but it did seem crazy to her. But these were these kind of a bit of telepathy and so forth. But if you were to go out and say, oh yeah, I was experiencing telepathy, and then they said, oh yeah, okay, well, telepathy. What kind of drugs are you on? No drugs? Uh-oh. He's nuts. You're nuts. You're nuts. You're nuts. You're experiencing telepathy. Obviously, you're nuts. But anyways, but but so that's kind of how society reacts, as far as like when we go look into the past, and we see these saints, and they had these wonderful writings, and they talk about these amazing things. Or you go back into the Bible, the biblical literature, and they're talking about amazing things and everything, and you don't think they're nuts. But if your neighbor starts talking about those kinds of things, well, you might just think that person is just Looney Tunes, Looney Tunes. So the ideas are becoming more real with quantum. I can't see the word. I put that up on the screen. With quantum science and quantum physics, these ideas are becoming more real. Yes, they are. And so what it is, that there are these multi dimensions, and that sometimes you might experience life. You might experience your life in a in a different dimension, and maybe seen. And so if you think of what the fifth dimension is, in the fifth dimension, all time exists at the same time, and then if there is a multiverse, all universes exist at the same time, and that's according to if in 5D as in a physics sense, not 5D in a new age sense. So I'm not really going to refer to that because I see that we live in this 4-dimensional world. We live in a 4-dimensional world. We live in a world of 4 dimensions, which is like, and so if you were living in a 1-dimensional world, so we think of what, so if we look at what a 1-dimensional world is, I'll just use some thing. And so 1 dimension looks like this. If you are in a 1-dimensional world, your world looks just like this. If it's a 2-dimensional world, your world looks like this. It has, you can move along this line this way, and then you can move along the line this way. And so you are in a 3-dimensional world. Well, your world is like this. This is in a 3-dimensional world. A 4-dimensional world is one in which you are moving, you are in this world and you are moving forward in time. You're moving forward in time. So the 4th dimension is time. But in how we discover, how we experience the 4th dimension, we only see it run in one direction. So in our world, we experience time as only running in one dimension. Now, if you are in the 5th dimension, and we look at a 5th dimension, and if we could experience life from a 5th dimensional point of view, let's say we're just gonna put this like as a little tiny cube here. So this is your 3-dimensional world. So you had dreams that came true, and you was being oversaturated with messages, but don't know what was mine and what wasn't because you were busy being stressed about being a mom and all that mom. And I see, I get you. Yeah. So you're having so if this was your 3-dimension, but you're looking at if you could travel this way and this way in time, where this being time, this is a fifth dimension would be being able to travel this way and that way with time. But at the 5th dimensional level, 5D, time goes forward and backwards. You felt very low not having anyone in your life to empathize with in your direct vicinity. So you had lots of people on YouTube that could talk about these things, but you couldn't actually physically talk to them in that moment. And so where you're looking at a 5D world where the 4th dimension is time, but in a 5th dimensional, in a 5D where time can run all different directions, but also what you might have in a 5D world is all your choices that you've ever made become available to you in that moment. So in the moment, you would be able to see all the possible choices. And so this, if you experienced a 5-dimensional world, you would certainly go nuts. And that whole idea of your ego would dissolve because you would be all of these people at the same time, because all of these choices. And so like if you chose to chew some gum, or you chose to have a chocolate sundae, or if you chose to have pizza, or if you chose to have fish, all these different choices, all these possible choices you could have been made would be experienced at the same time. So that's life in a 5-dimensional world. That's what life would be like in a 5-dimensional world, is experiencing everything at the same time at once. And so when they think of like a person, having their NDEs, and they kind of go off into a different realm, actually, that's probably what they are going into, is going into a 5-dimensional world. Grounding, so yeah, that's why you shut off into a cook. So you were practicing remote viewing, and you got freaked out. And yes, and so that's what can happen, is that when you are practicing these things and you have these experiences, and then these experiences turn into fear, because fear is just one of those things that people experience. When what separates a normal mystic experience from a psychotic mystic experience is the level of fear and disassociation and disillusionment that one might experience. And so when I came back from Israel, it was a good couple months before I could integrate back in, because the energy was really, it was a weird energy when I came back, and I didn't like the energy, because the energy that existed in Jerusalem, that we experienced in Jerusalem, was different. It was being spiritually charged, and almost everybody in the group had the experience. And so that's like 15 out of 20 people had this amazing psychological, spiritual, if you want to use that word, experience being in Israel, from just being in that place. And then there's a legitimate disorder called Jerusalem syndrome. And in Jerusalem syndrome is that a person goes to Jerusalem, they go to Israel, and then they continue to absorb this energy that exists there. And then the next thing they know, they're wandering around on the streets in a burlap sack, claiming to be Jesus, or claiming to be John the Baptist, claiming to be a prophet. And this is something that is real. This is something that really happens. Now, I think with Israel as it is now, that's been in a state of war for 2 years, and in a state of war, I don't know that people have that experience now, but they did. I went in 1995, and prior to 2001, prior to the war on terror, erupting through that whole region, that's when I went, and that's when I had read about that, the whole thing, Jerusalem syndrome, of going to Israel, going to Jerusalem, and staying a week or two, and then having this experience, having a psychosis, say having a psychotic break with reality. And so people in your reality were saying strange things, doing weird things, but you were told you were overreacting. It felt like being in the middle of a witch hunt, and everyone, okay, I get you. So you know what I'm talking about. So you've had these experiences, and it probably a lot of people have had these experiences, and a lot more people. And so people have these experiences, and they may be, and so what separates a normal psychotic break from reality from a full-blown a psychosis, a normal psychosis from a psychotic break from reality, is your ability to readapt into normal reality, and how long it takes for you to function in society again. And so if you're not able to function, and that's, I think, is what the experience of like Hildegard of Being was, or some of these other saints and mystics that famous ones that the church has written about and talked about, is that you live in a very conservative area and it was very cruel, or you felt it in such a way that there was no compassion there. There's no way to put your experience into a context. And so you can put it into this spiritual context, which is what happens. They go off into a monastery, and then people come and listen to your visions because you tell things that seem fantastic. You have these fantastic stories of cosmic reality and so forth and etc. And you can answer people's questions when it comes to scripture. What does this scripture mean? What does that scripture mean? And then in that sense, you have this experience and you go into this other reality and everything makes sense. And you feel like you have this direct tap phone line, so you have you're like just plugged in. You're just plugged into the world, and you experience. And so you have a thought, and you wonder, what does that mean? And then the answer to that, what that means, shows up in your head. It just shows up, and then in that, this is sense of you have these experiences, these cosmic experiences, and you gain cosmic knowledge out of it. And so what separates a psychosis from a normal mystic experience is, according to Chat GDP, is your ability to reintegrate back into society. And if you in reintegrating back into society, you feel anxiety, you feel like you just want to separate yourself away. Well, that is the experience of having more of that psychotic break, because you feel this one reality, and then there's this other reality, and it's sort of and it's that whole thing of you are here, and someone found your channel and leaked it, and so you're, oh, I see. Did that just happen, Karen? So like here is me, and here is the world, and there's being kind of a divergent here. So in this sense, you may be here, you are here, and then the world's reality and your reality separate into two different realities, and then maybe they come back, and then they come back at a different time. So like when I had the Israel experience, this break was like 6 months. It was like 6 months. And then I had another time where there was a break like that. That was actually the longest break. And then, or when you had a telephone line, and then maybe that divergence between what you are experiencing and the world is like less. And so like maybe it's like this, the world, and so you might have a lesser divergence, and then you are this is you, but and the world is experiencing reality one way, and then you are kind of going on. It started last June. Yeah. Well, you've been under a lot of stress, and that can certainly can trigger this kinds of stuff. But then if I go back to the beginning of this, one of the things that I had mentioned in the beginning was this guy he was a TED Talk from like 12 years ago. I should link it in there. I don't think I can multitask this. I could go look on and link it. And he talked about what exists in indigenous cultures is that in indigenous cultures, they don't stigmatize people who have these types of experiences. And what happens is that then usually they would become the shaman, or they become some kind of a part of the spiritual teacher kinds of practice within the tribe, within that society. And so then usually there would be someone else who'd gone through something similar to that in the past, and that person would be tasked to guide you through the process, so that while you are off in Dingaling land, and you're just like nutso, and you feel like you're nutso, that this older person, this would be helping you to integrate what it is that you experienced into their mythological structure, into the mythological structure. And so our society lacks that altogether. It lacks it all together. And so, and then being that we lack ability to integrate the people who have these experiences into society, we will get a lot of crazy stuff will happen. A lot of crazy stuff will happen, or people will go really off the rails on the crazy train, you know, and then especially if there's nothing to tether you back down, no one to bring it. And then if they do tether you back down, they're going to try to do it with like anti-psychotic drugs. And then anti-psychotic drugs and all of that stuff is really dangerous, because, you know, a lot of those things will give you diabetes. All the anti-psychotic drugs that they have today, for the most part, they'll give you diabetes. So you ask me, is it working? Look, then your tire drops flat, and all the air machines at different places out of order. And so, okay, well, that's kind of weird. But anyways, and that's kind of a like the difference between our world and then the other world that came before, is they had a mechanism in place, and then you had these experiences, and that experience itself would be the thing that puts you into it would be the thing that would put you into the culture, to be part of the spiritual well-being of that society. Because eventually these other holy people would know that what you were experiencing, you would cycle out of that, and then you would be able to reintegrate everything that you experienced back into your normal life, back into whatever your normal life is. And so, like, this is stuff that is all over the planet. People have these experiences, and the indigenous cultures all over the planet had a mechanism for dealing with people who had mystic experiences. And the only one that doesn't really have a mechanism is Western culture. And the limited amount of experience places it does, but in the past, you could go to become part of a monastery, you become a monk, you could become a nun, and then you would have that place you'd have that place where you would be not seen as crazy, where your experience would be valued, where you'd be a valued member of society. Now, in our world, it's very difficult if you are a Catholic, it's very difficult to become a Catholic monk, because, for one, you can't have any debt, and you need to be I was looking up when I was younger, to be a Trappist monk, and that was the Trappist one was the one that appealed to me. But you needed, essentially, to have a master's of divinity, you needed to be a priest, but not be a parish priest. You had to go all the way through the education of becoming a priest, and then you would go to. So if you were from a poor class, you could just forget it, unless there was some way for somebody was going to pay your education. Somebody was going to pay for that experience. So people would come up to me while you was out with the kids and say, her money isn't everything. Millionaires are bad. And I'm like, who are you? And they're, well, that's kind of weird. That's kind of a weird, but anyway, yeah. I probably should talk about this again on another day, and then I can just have you on as a guest. But we have that. But anyway, so there are people who had these experiences through time. And have I said anything of significance here, or is it just saying stuff that is pretty standard fare? Does anything stand out? Anything stand out other than I'm talking about? Yeah, I know there's a whole lot there. There's much more. And in talking about, there's much more in this realm, in this kind of world here. And well, hello, Sarah Jane. Welcome, Sarah Jane. And yeah, so I was like, was kind of thinking about that and a little bit. I did have this in mind, that this was going to be the topic for tonight. Actually, I had another topic, but the person didn't respond. You know what's kind of interesting here? I'm going to tell you something that's really, really fascinating, is that Sarah here does Reiki, and the other Sarah person that I have association with on her channel also does Reiki. So maybe people whose name is Sarah have a tendency to do Reiki. Do you think there's anything to that? But maybe it's just a coincidence that Sarah Jane does Reiki, and then the other Sarah that comes on my channel, or we're gonna do a show soon. So you're unsettled because you dreamt of your old boss, and he passed away a few days later, and so that was kind of unsettling. Yeah, that would be. But then I don't know about dream language. I mean, because when people have dreams about, let's say, about things that are going to happen in the world, most of the time, those dreams don't manifest into anything real. And which gets me to be thinking, let me just take another path here. I take another path that gets me to be thinking, a holy fire Reiki master. Yeah. Well, it's kind of dealing with the energies and so forth. And so when people have visions or dreams about like oh, you didn't laugh I didn't hear that. Oh, yeah. Thank you for participating here. Yeah. And so, yeah, I know that some people do have those prophetic dreams. I guess, because I mentioned that I kind of think that I think a lot of things exist in the realm of mythology, and And so I guess you would look at, there's like these different realities. We have our world, and then there is this other world that is layered on top of it, and that other world that is layered on top of it is, and so it, depending on what your culture is, will tell you what that world is. And so if you are, and you have a different interpretive strategy, and your strategy for interpretation is different depending on what mythological tradition that you were born into. And so for instance, when this Parkrose Permaculture story about spiritual psychosis, and it was speaking of people who were, where they were experiencing demon possession, and they were experiencing, spiritual battles, and this and that. Well, that their mythological structure governed what kinds of experiences they were having when they were having these experiences. And so they experienced the things of the demons, and they experienced the angels and the demons, and these great cosmic battles going on. This is just me speaking and trying to put it into a context as I understand it, as an academic, as a person who has studied religion academically and so forth. And so when I think about these, I that's the kind of things I think about. And so you think about this, and you have that context, the context that it's in. A lot of that is dependent upon what mythological tradition you were born into. And so if you were born into a charismatic fundamentalist sort of a thing, if you were born into that kind of a structure, you may see angels and demons, and you may see these cosmic battles taking place in your visions. And then, but if you were born into a Native American one, you may have a totally different experience with that same mystic encounter, that same experience with these other realms. Like I would say, I think what it is I think what we're experiencing here is, this is my theory here, is that we exist in a 4-dimensional world. And what happens is that occasionally you experience the 5th dimension. Occasionally our brains somehow experience the 5th dimension. And what you experience in the 5th dimension can be a total ego, your total ego dissolving of reality into multiple realities. So that there's so many multiple realities, and in that experience it is, and that's where you may, where you are experiencing many realities at the same time, and your sense of self will begin to dissolve, because you're just seeing so you're seeing yourself, sense of self is disappearing, because you're seeing your sense of self as manifested in multiple different types of selves, and you may not actually see those multiple selves, but you experience in that, you have this experience that is, so somebody agrees me with something about something. I know that Jeff doesn't agree with me on many things. Phoenix, welcome, Phoenix. Because when I talk about some of this stuff with Jeff, or I know that he doesn't agree with me because I I kind of mainly because, and it's okay. I like Jeff, and I want him to come back on my channel. Oh, you missed me, yeah. And so I know we're not all meant to agree, and but where I disagree is that sense that I see. Did any of you guys read Tolkien, The Lord of the Rings? Do you have any experience with Tolkien, The Lord of the Rings? Let me see if I can get a prop. I get a prop. I have a prop over here. And a prop. Where's my prop? I don't know. I guess I don't have a prop. I have my glass ball. Anyway, I don't. It's probably in this other drawer, not easily accessible. Yeah, so we're not all meant to agree, and that's right, and that's good, because it makes for a more livelier conversation when a person doesn't agree with you, because that's how you can you can look where the so you and Tolkien have the same birthday. You know, before I go on into my story, and hopefully I can remember this. When I was doing the graduate studies and in religious studies, I opened up a biblical commentary, and in the notes, one of the notes was J.R.R. Tolkien because J.R.R. Tolkien was a biblical scholar. He was a biblical scholar, and I opened up this commentary, and there in it was a note authored by J.R.R. Tolkien about a particular mythological ideation in as far as in its interpretive strategy of some scripture. And so yeah, and anyways, and so in the Lord of the Rings, there were these devices. That's right. We don't have to agree because we are all different, and that's right. And that's what makes this fun. And so in maybe it's down here. That's kind of driving me nuts. Anyway, in the Lord of the Rings, there were these devices. I guess we'll just use this. There were stones, but they were perfectly round stones. And so in the world, before Sauron corrupted the world, these stones were used to gaze into these stones, and so you could communicate with other beings, other city states, other elves, and other places in Middle Earth. And so they had all these other people could experience all these different things. Not experience, it was more of a communicative structure. And so these stones, and I can't remember the plantaire stones, I think that's what they were called, like that the surveillance company, the mass surveillance company, it was the same name. It was the same name as that mass surveillance company, because they took that concept out of Lord of the Rings, and they used that for their company name. And so these stones, they were round crystal balls. They were just round crystal balls, and you could look into them and you could see things. Now, after Sauron came in, and they forged the Ring of Power, the nature of those stones changed. So you could see into these stones, but you could see alternative presents, alternative pasts, alternative futures. Now, there is a technology we have that technology here as far as a spiritual technology is concerned. And you can look in and you can see things. And when I was in my 20s and I was hanging out with this other girl, and, you know, she was like 6 years younger than me, and I thought like she was too young for me. So I could have pursued a relationship with her, but I didn't because of I thought she was too young. But, at almost 60 years age, I mean, at this point in time, the differences of a 6 year age gap is like nothing. It's nothing at all. A 20-year age gap between somebody who's 60 and 40. I mean, that's like nothing at all. But anyways, in going to these charismatic Catholic prayer group, but not everybody who showed up was Catholic, but a lot of them were. And I went once, and people were like looking into these plantaire, I'm not pronouncing, stones, but that stone wasn't present, but they were as if they were looking into those stones, and they were seeing. And so this energy was ripping around. It was ripping around the room. It would be here, then it would be right here, and then it would be on to the next person. It would just be going from place to place to place. And so that's your rant for now. And then, this stuff would just ripping around the room from place to place to place. And sometimes when that spirit hits you, you had visions of the world, visions of the world. And so when I gathered from that experience and these experiences, I didn't experience those visions of the world, but I have had those experiences before. And I've read one of those dreams that I had yesterday in yesterday's show. But people had these visions, and they were, they would be visions about what was going to happen. Oh, the world was going to end, or whatever. You would have it's going to end. Oh, Y2K is coming. Oh, the world's going to end. Oh, the world was going to end. And it didn't. And if we look at history, that every time, going through time, and I went through this once before. I mean, the prediction to when Jesus was going to come back, when the end of the world was going to happen. Well, there's been like 1,000 times, 1,000 different dates have been set for that. It's never, and so that it tells me that every time you set a date for the ending of the world, well, it's not gonna. It doesn't seem to happen that way. And of course, the scriptures themselves say that only the Father knows when the matrix is going to collapse. Only the Father knows when the simulation will collapse, and this world is always ending, and it is always beginning. The beginning and the ending are happening all at the same time. From a 5D point of view, the beginning and the ending have happened all at once. Now, that's a bit of my rant about this. I don't know that I really explained this at all. I feel like I didn't. But what I was, trying to say is that how many times have the Seventh-day Adventists predicted, and they keep pushing it up, and then you have, like, within the New Age world, you have all these different endings and different things. And so, like, what is one of the things that's going on? Okay, that's right. There's like, the world is going to split between 3D and 5D, and then 5D means, oh, everyone's going to be transferred off into this other realm of being. And and then, which means that everybody's going to die, the whole world's going to end, the simulation's going to end. It's going to happen any day now. Oh, why? Let's see. Was it December 21st, 2012? The end of the Mayan calendar. The world was going to end, and has it ended yet? Has it? And the last time this world had a major ending point was 12,000 years ago. But it didn't end. It still continued on. What happened 12,000 years ago was a rock fell down from the sky and it hit an ice sheet. Now, there were other things where in different endings, if we want to look at the apocalypse. Well, the apocalypse, as states if you look at the book of Revelations and you look at the apocalypse, well, the last chapter of the apocalypse is the rebirth of a new world. So what sits at the end of the world is a new world. So in a sense, what Maria says, the world is always ending and the world is always being reborn. It's a continual thing. And so our world is, in one sense or another, is in the process of ending. Our world is in the process of ending here in this country, and something else will come from it. And then if I look at things and how things have changed in my lifetime, having been born in the 60s, having experienced the party phone line, having a party phone line where you pick up the phone, you want to call somebody because you're somebody didn't want to pay the next level up of the phone plan, so you could get a direct line, but so you want to call somebody and your neighbor is on the phone, and so you could listen in and see what your neighbor's got to say, what's going on. The party line. I remember the party line, and I went to when I went to high school. I think when I was like a senior in high school, a junior or senior in high school, is when they introduced computers, and they were like these kit computers, but there was no internet. And then when I graduated from high school and I went to community college, I learned how to. I was using I think I was taking some base and programming classes or whatnot, and they were using a mainframe computer. And you had and so the computer was in an ice cold room, and there were like 4 or 5 different terminals that could plug in. And so, but this is a computer that's not connected to any outside sources. It was just used for basic things. Or there was the age of the personal computer that was beginning in the 1986, 87, 88, kind of in that realm. And if I look at yesterday, I kind of showed my papers, and all my papers were typed on a manual typewriter all the way through college. I didn't use a computer. Welcome, the Chaz. Welcome. Welcome back. And so I didn't use computers to type my papers in college. And then when I went to grad school, I had this standalone word processing unit, and it just did process words, and it hooked it up to your laptop was big and heavy, and it was just like a glorified typewriter. And that was that world. Now we're in this other world where we have these devices, and how many of these devices? I got a tablet, I got 2 phones, one phone that I'm actually doing the show on, and this is my other phone. And actually it's my mother's cell phone, and then a laptop that I don't really use for this program, but I'm using different things, and we're in this other world. And then you have social media, and so that's a totally different world, yeah, so a watch phone. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Phone watches or whatever, and so you have these different. This is a totally different world than the world that I was born into in the '60s and the '70s. And so, in that sense, and there's other things that I had remembered from was having freezer space in town. So in town they had in town they had a community freezer, and so so the old TVs that were bulky, and so you went and bought like a half a beef or a quarter of a beef, and you had it like sectioned up, or maybe it was your deer or your elk, and that when it was all butchered out, and then if you wanted a steak for Friday night, you had to go drive into town and take some steak out of your community freezer, then you bring that back home. I mean that the whole community freezer thing, those things went away by the '80s. By the '80s, they weren't anymore. And then the other thing about this other world that I was born into was there was more industry, more localized industry. And so like I've mentioned before that I grew up in a lumber mill. My dad owned a lumber mill. All my neighbors were either loggers or they were business owners. Like in this valley that I live in. In this valley that I live in, two of the neighbors owned logging companies. My next door neighbor was a timber faller, or they drove log trucks. All the industry in this area was timber. And that all ended in the '80s, pretty much ended in the '80s. And but by the mid '90s, that whole industry, for the most part, was reduced down to now like 2 logging companies and like 4 or 5 mills. It went down from there being like 1,000 mills. There were hundreds of mills. And that was including mills that could be operated by one person, where you just take this portable sawmill up into the woods. You fall a tree, maybe you use horses or whatever to So to do this, you did a lot more manual labor. There were people who did the horse logging, and I knew that I went to school with the children of the horse logger, and I think he had Clydesdale horses, the horses with the big giant hooves. Well, he had a couple of those Clydesdale horses, and he made his living going on the farmer's land and thinning and pulling those trees out of the forest, and so they could be loaded up on a log truck. But he was a horse logger, and that was like one of the ways that was done, and that was part of the old world. And then in this other old world things, there was all the support industries, and then the town that I talked about with the community freezer. Well, it also had a brick plant, and that brick plant doesn't exist anymore. I mean, I think it was starting to phase out by the time I was like being born and all that. But there was the brick plant, and so half the town was built out of brick that was mined and fired right in the town. That world. And then there was the machine shops, and see, my dad in his mill, he made his own parts. I mean, if there were parts that he couldn't make to make his mill work, well, he had to go order those parts out. Then my mom was always like going to a nearby town, a nearby city, to go pick up parts and so forth. But so this other world that existed in this country is one that a lot of people want this world back, and I'm kind of like in that camp of wanting that world back too, where we manufactured everything that we needed right locally, that we didn't have to rely on some machine shop in China and have that part shipped all the way across the sea in order to make your machine work. Where you could go down to the local machinist, and they could build that piece, they could build that part. And so that was another world. That world doesn't exist anymore. That world went through you missed that world too, Sarah. Yeah. And so that world doesn't exist anymore. That world went through a complete apocalypse for the most part in the 1980s. It started in the 80s and it concluded around in mid 90s. In the mid 90s is when this world we're in started to be born. This world was born like somewhere in like 96, 97. That's when this world that we are living in was born. And now we got these other pieces of technology that are coming in, the AI. And so this world is going to end. And this other world is going to be born out of it. And we don't know what's going to happen when, if general artificial intelligence actually exists and comes into being, and when the quantum computers get coupled, we don't know what's going to happen when that happens. So you graduated from high school in 1996. I graduated in the mid 80s. In the mid 80s is when I graduated, and my high school had vocation programs. But by the time I graduated from high school, those vocation programs didn't exist anymore. So you could go to high school, graduate, and have a skill. So they had a home economics. You graduated in 2003. You're really young, Maria. Really young. So you could go. They had like a like bookkeeping and secretarial work, and home economics. That was one track you could take. You in your freshman year, you go in there, home economics, and that gave you like personal finance, gave you like bookkeeping and secretarial skills. That was one thing. So there was something for women to do, or there wasn't very many men who were doing that. And then there was the logging, the low speed logging, and so you could learn about how to fall trees and do and logging stuff. That was another one. Then another one was like auto body and mechanics. Auto body and mechanics. And then the other one was agriculture. So I guess that was 4. So there was the home economics and the bookkeeping and secretarial, the auto body and auto mechanics, low speed loggers, and agriculture. 4 vocation education programs that pretty much by the time that I graduated from high school, they were gone. They were gone. And so when I had talked in a few previous time, a subject that I had brought up on this channel about how people in my generation grew up faster. We grew up faster because there was opportunities. One, we started working when we were younger. We started working when we were younger. I mean, we had like when I was like 8, 9, 10 years of age, that the strawberry bus came by. So when school got out in what, June? Is it June? May or June? Well, it was like into strawberry season. And the school bus would come by and they would pick up all the kids who were like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years of age. And you would go out to the out to the farmers' fields and pick strawberries for a few pennies a day. I was terrible at it. The row bosses were always like, because it was late, like so early in the morning for me, they'd pick you up at like 6 o'clock in the morning to have your lunch. And so they had these people that were cracking the whip to get you to work and all that. And I think maybe I was a little older than that. I was probably like 10. And then it was like a time, for these times was the times when the mothers had had time to had like a 2-week vacation, maybe 3-week vacation. And then if there was a choice, you could move on from strawberries to raspberries. I never did. Man, to this day, I still hate picking strawberries, and I hate that with a passion. Or not just strawberries, berries, anything. Now, granted, I have some. I do have like a cherry tree and pear trees and apple trees and grapes, and I do pick those grapes, and I've made grape juice multiple times. But so that's part of that other world that we existed in. And so my generation and Generation X, we had work opportunities when we were children, and so it's being around, and those work opportunities also help to grow us up faster. But then when we hit high school, we had those vocation education programs, and those, you don't like fruits like with strawberries in them, yeah. And so those vocation programs, it gave you a tract so that you could graduate from high school and go out and you can get a job that paid a living wage. Maybe you get in there and you get an apprenticeship, an apprenticeship or something like that, and you have the monies to get married when you're 18, 19, 20 years of age. And people did. So you make ice cream out of it, yeah. And so that's the thing of it is the world that I lived in. And I had people in college that I went to college with that were married. They got married right out of high school. Now they didn't start having children until they got done with high school, but there was married person housing on when I went to the 4-year college, because last Friday I had one of my classmates from Winfield College. I went to Winfield College, and he went to that college right out of high school. I was delayed by 2 years because I went to a community college first, to do a lot of remedial work because I have a learning disability, or I'm on the autistic spectrum, or whatever you want to call it. It was, in order for me to integrate into society, it was a lot more work. A lot more work had to be done first. So 1950s home ec books. It because they have oh, I got you. That's kind of funny. It's funny. And yeah. So, think that it was a different world. And in that world was a totally different world than the one I was born into, and the totally different world than the one that you were born into, Karen, and everything. And so we have these different worlds that we're born into, and these different worlds have a different mythological narrative and so forth. Because every generation creates its own mythological narrative. That's Walden Pond. That's Henry David Thoreau, because he talks about that was a need to do that. But so when we think about that, these different worlds, and so the worlds are ending and beginning all the time. And an end of a world doesn't mean the total annihilation and well, actually, in one sense, it does mean that, because that world is gone. But a new world was born out of it. And so there was that, yeah. Your mother was a school bus driver at age 16 in high school? No, that's right. That wouldn't happen today. I think that the minimum age you need to be a school bus driver is like 21. 21 is like a minimum age to do a whole lot of things. And there was like one of my classmates in high school that went in, that joined the military when he was 17 years of age, National Guard. When between his junior and senior year in high school, he went to boot camp. I think he joined when he was 16, because he was one of those guys that was born in December, and then instead of going to and so they kicked him into the first grade, so he was like a year behind everyone else. And so when he graduated from high school, he was 17. So he went into boot camp when he was 16, between the junior and the senior year in high school. He graduated from high school and he was 17. And then when he turned 18, then he joined the regular army, and then he went off into the regular army. But when he was a junior in high school, he was working graveyard shift at a mill pulling grain chain. So he was working all night long, and then he would go to school, and then he would do his homework and do all that kind of stuff. He would sleep a few hours, and then and he got like straight A's. He was an ace. He was a real smart kid. He was an A student, and so people in this generation, people growing up now, they don't have those opportunities. And then you have the child labor laws and all that kind of stuff that prevent people from working like that, from having those opportunities. Because if you're smart enough to do it, why not? I mean, I guess that's me. I'm kind of libertarian that way. So I'm kind of libertarian that way, that we, people should, be, maybe have a little bit more freedom than they do. I don't know. But that's just my feeling, is that my people in my generation grew up faster because we had a lot more opportunities. And then I have one of my great uncles who I never met. I mean, his mom died when my grandfather was like 8 years old. The mom died, and then his older brother at age 13 went to work on a ranch. He left home, went to work at 12 or 13. I think it was 12 years old. At 12 years old, he went away from home and he got a job as on a ranch as a ranch hand. Lived in the bunkhouse and done all that. So he wasn't without supervision, but he went to work when he was 12, and then by the time he was like 20, I think he owned his own ranch by that time, and he was married and with children and everything, and so you had, was he still a kid? Well, brain wise, he probably was still a kid. Brain wise, and then you look at your life. I look at my life, and now I still feel like a kid. I still feel like a big kid, because like it was one of the peoples who I was speaking with who could be classified as a person who has spiritual psychosis, a person with spiritual psychosis, and a person that I know who would be literally, if you were looking at those definitions, they say he classifies as a person who is in a spiritual psychotic event. And what did he say? What was it he said? God, I forgot what he said. Oh, shoot. I don't remember. I lost my train of thought. I'm getting old. And I've been talking here for like 90 minutes, they need to bring the subject back around to the whole spiritual psychosis thing, and to show that it's maybe, is it all related? I don't know. We have these different worlds. Our worlds end and begin all the time. They end and begin all the time. There's endings and beginnings all the time. Oh, I know what he said. He said that you're kind of like a kid, aren't you? And you're like, and the reason he said like you're a kid is because I'm a highly imaginative person, and me being like a child, having a very childlike brain, is the reason why I am a card reader, or why I have the ability to see into this other realm, is because I'm still a kid. I have a child mind. I have a childlike mind. Even though I grew up pretty fast, I still have a child mind. And it's because I have a child mind that I can connect my imagination up to yours. I can connect my imagination up to yours. I can imagine things. So you too, you also have a child mind. So do you believe so cult leaders and narcissists? Well, there is that. That's right, because some people do believe that they are kind of a narcissistic thing. And but we all have that. We all have that narcissism in us. Because if you're a normal person, you're in a range between narcissism, between being empathetic and being a narcissist. And so like maybe like right now I'm kind of exercising out of my narcissistic self for wanting to be on YouTube, wanting to be have a show on YouTube and to do this stuff that is I'm acting out of that aspect of myself. And then when I go do my other channel and I'm reading cards, I'm kind of doing both. I'm both that narcissist, and then on the other side, I am this person who's using my empathy. I'm using my imagination to connect up to your imagination. And so you have to use discernment with people. And yeah, so I didn't think I was going to talk this long. And so, but this is a big subject. And so if we go back, way back to the beginning, way back, so the feed, but the thing is, I don't know that, I don't do that manipulation thing because I don't really know, at least I don't think I do. I don't think I'm manipulating people. I mean, I do have to work at, empathy. There are areas that I have no empathy at all. And those are areas that I've been working on for years to try to get rid of some of these behavioral traits, and so I really work at it, and you have to work at it, and so you're working at it, and how can you be more of a loving person, and so forth. And so I have those areas, and everybody has their weaknesses. Everybody has these things that they're challenged by, and I have mine, you have yours. And these are these things, these thorns in our sides that we can't get rid of, or maybe we try to get rid of, or as you look at Martin Luther, because I was born in the Lutheran Church, then I became a Catholic, but the Martin Luther, with one of his beefs with Catholicism, was about always confessing the same thing and never getting anywhere. And with many men, because they go into confession because of their biology, and they're constantly and then when do they get a relief from that biology? It's like when they get to be old like me, when things don't work as well as they used to. Maybe you get old and you have to use drugs to make it work, and if I'm not to be too blank, yeah, we have these tendencies. You're right, and then is that men struggle with objectification of beauty, and I struggle with this, and I mean, I'm not exempt. I objectify people that I find beautiful. I mean, I objectify that, and that's one of the biggest faults of men. Men do this, and it doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is, they do it, and the only ones who don't are the ones who are asexual, who have no or their sexual expression is otherwise. Maybe it's through emotional connections or otherwise, and those are the only ones that people who have or in a sense are freed from objectification. I'm not freed from it. I'm not. I have it's less. It's 60 years of age. It's less but it's not. But that is like one of the more common thing that a man does when he goes and sits in front of the priest. That's what he's talking about every single time. Is about, now, is maybe it's not talking about your wife, but you're talking about some other person that you're objectifying in that moment. That's taking you away. And as Jesus says, that thinking is the same as doing. You have those thoughts in your heads, you've already done it. And so that's the struggle of, and I can only speak for myself, because I can't speak for females, because I don't know what it's like to be a female, but I do know what it's like to be a man. And as a man, I struggle with that. And it's not as bad as it was when I was 18 or 15 or 14, but that's the thing is that got Martin Luther to be thinking about the sacrament of confession. We are human and we need to talk about it. They talked about it in that sacrament of confession. I know that that's what he was talking about, because he was a man, and he was talking about going into confession and confessing the same damn thing every day. The same damn thing every day. And I think he was a priest. And so as a priest, he was celibate, or was supposed to be celibate, because in the 1400s, they were celibate. In the 1400s, they weren't necessarily celibate in the 10s, because in that first split of the church between the Western Church and the Eastern Church priests, they were able to marry. The Western Church, the Latin Church, the Western Church priests were not able to marry. And so that was a big thing. And so when Martin Luther wrote his 99 Theses and put them on the wall, I mean, this was one of these issues. He didn't speak about it, but this was one of those issues of the fact that confessing didn't seem to do no damn good when you're confessing the same thing every single day. Yes, that's a whole conversation all on its own, and I seem to be meandering here, away from spiritual psychosis over to just a everyday spiritual reality. And how did I get here? I don't know how I got here. Maybe I'll go back and review this conversation to see what its pacing is like, and so forth. All right, yeah. Sarah, I was talking about you a few minutes ago, actually, and so Sarah, the other Sarah here, this is Reiki Sarah, and someday Reiki Sarah is going to come on. We're going to do a show together. I just kind of put out it's not going to be like a weekly show. It's going to be like, what? Yeah, I was thinking about you. Yeah, I was thinking about you. You feel like you were a nun in another? Yeah, like a half hour ago, I was thinking about you, because Sarah Jane does energy work, just like you do energy work. Sarah Jane does energy work, and I think she mentioned Reiki, and so yeah, every other week, and that gives us time to study. We could do. You see, we got Joseph Campbell here. I got actually the Power of Myth for Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell, who's one of my scholar heroes, Joseph Campbell. And putting things into a context, of your mythological narrative. And so when I was talking about earlier about when you have these spiritual experiences, or you have these, or is what the Western medical psychiatric service might call it, would be You have to do your research to read those books too. You're right. And so but when we have these spiritual psychoses, it is our mythological narrative that we are born into that govern what it is that we experience. And so if you are born into, depending on what that is, it determines what it is that you see or not see in your visions. And if I bring this back to the beginning, so I did a whole lot of meandering here and a lot of stuff. It is your mythological narrative. And so when I was talking about this Parkrose Permaculture person who did a story 2 days ago on spiritual psychosis, is spiritual psychosis running rampant in American Christianity? Well, what it is, and the examples she was showing was about spiritual warfare, demon possession, or this and that. And that, in that brand of Christianity, that's what you're experiencing. You have this mystic experience. You have this mystic experience. You have this feeling of disassociation with yourself, a feeling of ego dissolving, or your ego being broken apart. You feel yourself, you feel cosmic reality, and whatever you feel, well, what you experience in that moment and how you interpret what you experience all depends on the stories that you were born into in your environment. And if you are in that brand of Christianity that is all about the, demons and demon possession and this and that and that, well, that's what you're going to experience when you have when those things happen to you. And so, like for me, having my dad being an atheist, so your ego died when you did, yeah. And so like with me in the household that I experienced, grew up in, where I didn't have anybody telling me that the stuff I was experiencing was like wrong, shame, and the self-limiting beliefs. I didn't have, and so my dad was like, for my agnostic atheist, my father being, and I got the stories of the church, but the Lutheran Church is pretty damn liberal. I grew up in a liberal church. I grew up in a church that ordains women, that's inclusive. That's the kind of church I grew up in. And so I didn't get those stories of demon possession and all that. And those stories were there in the Bible, but they interpreted them differently. And so when I had my transpersonal experiences, when I had these mystic experiences, I didn't experience things like demons. I don't even, personally in my worldview, I don't know that I think that they even exist. Heaven, hell, Satan, I don't really think that those things exist. It may be because that was the mythological narratives that I grew up with. Having a father who was a physicist, a mother who was a teacher. She went to a Nazarene school, but when she married my dad, she dumped the Holy Rolling religion in favor of the Lutheran Church, because the Lutheran Church was more inclusive. It had a more, the doors were opened, and there wasn't all this stuff, this baggage. And so the church just taught the gospel. The church just was teaching the teachings of Jesus about loving one another. And it wasn't about excluding people. So I didn't have that experience. I didn't have that mythology. I didn't grow up into that mythology, and I don't have those thoughts now. And even then, when I converted to Catholicism, when I was 27, 28 years of age, my mythology that I grew up in, the mythology that governed my life, was not one of exclusion. Though I will admit that I did have fun because I'm a very intellectual person, and I was way more intellectual when I was younger than I even am now. And so a part of me having fun would be, I think I've talked about this I talked about this before, especially when I was going to grad school, and you're learning about church heresies and those kinds of things, and it was the Jehovah Witness coming, knocking on the door, and then, oh, come on in, yeah, you're welcome, come, oh, sit down, oh, do you want a cup of coffee, or do you want some tea, and blah blah blah, and they start talking about their faith, and oh yeah, I know all about that heresy. And they're talking about, and they were said heretics. Yeah, I said, you're a heretic. Yeah, the Jehovah Witness faith, that's a heresy. And I, would proceed to tell them about the church, the doctrine and everything, and where it existed in church, and there was the battles, the theological battles, because that was all the stuff happened, in the first, like, between the 4th century and the 10th century, and someplace in there was the heresy of the Jehovah Witness. So there was that heresy, and I had talked about it, and then I said, yeah, you guys are heretics. If you want to become saved, you got to why don't you come to the Catholic Church? You can become a Catholic, and then you can give up your evil ways and blah blah. Okay, that was then. But part of that was me. Yeah, that was me. I did that stuff. I had, and I found, and I thought it was fun, and it was fun for me. It was fun. That was how I had fun. It was may not have been a good fun. Looking back on it, it was not a good fun because it was not accepting their mythological narrative that they believed. But then they didn't accept mine either. And anyways, I gotta wrap this up because I see that it's time. Oh, shoot. Man, I did that again. I hit the wrong button. Sorry, Care Bear. I did that to Maria once. Damn. And there's no way to undo it either. Dang. God dang it, Bill. Shoot. Anyways, I'm going to wrap this thing up. And yeah. Damn. Somebody's going to knock on my door here in a second. No, they're not. So anyways, that's all I have for today. Damn, I did this to Care Bear like 2 years ago. And then when you're in StreamYard, there's no way to ban a person. Oh, no. Yeah, and then that happened. I did that to Maria. I was like trying to show her comment on the stage, and then, God damn it, Bill. It's just fairy tales. That's all it is. I feel terrible every time that happens. I gotta wash my fingers. I got these big giant fingers. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys. I'm gonna call it a night. I'm gonna talk about this subject again later, at a later time. I'm not done with it. I think that this is a fascinating subject about spiritual psychosis, mystic experience, just the whole different ways that we experience our lives. And so to wrap this up, to conclude things, good night, Sarah, good night, Maria, Karen, if you're there, I really apologize that I hit the wrong button. The other Sarah, Tarot, and Oracle for the Soul, thank you. Chaz, Phoenix, thank you. Thank you, everybody. And if you're watching this on the, and Mama Sushi, thank you too. And if you're watching this thing on the playback, put one of these in the comment section, some of these in the comment section, and a yellow one of these. Yellow these. Yellow these. Yellow those. Good night for now. And I will be back with something different later. God dang it. I hate it when I did those things. Sorry, Karen. I really apologize. God dang it. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys. Way to put a damper on your whole rant and raving here, as I'm disillusioned from, disassociated from reality here on YouTube with my spam hat, my Hawaiian shirt, just speaking stream of consciousness out of this head. This kind of thing going on, spinning line after line of rhyme, mime, climb, sine waves snaking through the grass. I hear something blast on a radio over there. Talking, clocking, blocking. A car sits up on blocks in the front yard. I saw this in Israel. The Bedouin in their tents, cars jacked up on blocks in front of their tents, just like in my backyard, people with cars up on blocks, using cars, taking parts off their cars to keep their cars running. People do this stuff all over the world. There is a sameness of a practice of people all over the world. There is a uniting factor because people do people things. Good night. Bye-bye for now. This is 999 Show. My name is Bill. Like and subscribe if you like my content. If not, that's fine. Bye-bye.